for Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Yeehaw!
Okay. Holy cow!
May I have your attention, please?
Hey, this is Luke Combs.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
This is Craig Moore, and you're listening to
Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors. My Country 95.5.
Welcome in. Another great show planned for you. Boy, if you are a hunter, you are in paradise right now. Of course, lots of things you got to keep track of, though, when you're hunting this year. There are mandatory areas where you have to submit a sample for CWD testing. We'll get into that with Hank Edwards and Janet Millick. We have got a special guest from Colorado. His name is Scott Gillespie. Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery using dogs is now legal here in Wyoming. We'll talk to Scott about how that comes about. And Brian from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports is in. We'll chat about those crooks in the fishing world that tried to cheat. They've been sentenced or charged. We'll get into that and find out what's happening in Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but we're going to have fun.
It's no secret that Wyoming is home to some of the greatest fishing and hunting in the world.
Wow! It's colossal. It's stupendous. It's magnificent.
It's Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors on My Country 95.5. Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors on My Country 95.5.
Well, Janet, here we sit in October, and hunting has been going on for a little while now, and I know that there's some interesting data that has been coming in because there's been lots of samples that have been collected because in some areas it's mandatory and some areas are like a focus area where CWD is one of those diseases that we have been talking about for the last couple of years because it's important to find out as much information as possible and in what areas are affected. And we had to bring Hank Edwards in today so we could get the real 411 of what's happening.
That's right. I know you guys listen to us locally talk a lot about chronic wasting disease and the importance that disease has on wildlife around Casper, but Hank is truly the specialist when it comes to this, and he has been involved in the surveillance and monitoring of chronic wasting disease really since the beginning of his career. So we're excited to have Hank on board to talk to us a little bit today.
Yeah, and I'm old. I've been researching and surveying for chronic wasting disease in the state since the early 90s, believe it or not. And I know you guys have talked about this before. But, you know, when I first started with CWD, it was an obscure little disease. It only occurred in southeastern Wyoming, and now it covers almost the entire state. And now we're starting to see some effects, population effects of chronic wasting disease on some of our mule deer herds. That's why I'm really glad to be here today to talk a little bit about surveillance and the importance of submitting samples. It's really important to us to get enough samples from a particular hunt area or herd unit, whichever, so that we have a good idea of just how much CWD is out there. So we have a better idea to try and link how this disease may be affecting certain populations.
Hank, has CWD changed in the 30-some years that you've been looking at different strands of it? Has it changed or has it stayed the same, just got more intense?
Well, it's gotten more intense. As far as the disease itself, it's basically the same. We certainly see this disease, like I said, across the state, affecting deer populations worse than it's affecting many of our elk populations.
I think when chronic wasting disease was first discovered, it was in a small area. It wasn't across the state. We weren't seeing huge population declines. So we kind of just were sitting back and kind of watching it. And we weren't quite sure, what was going to happen. And we are starting to see these populations decline because of chronic wasting disease. And so while the actual disease itself maybe hasn't changed, I think the effects from the disease on populations have in fact changed.
Hank, you mentioned that it started in southeast Wyoming. What's the major cause of the disease spreading across the state?
I think the major cause of spread in Wyoming is likely just the natural movements or migrations of animals. And most of those probably can be attributed to deer as they move this disease around the state. It's important to kind of put this into context that it has taken, 40 years for this disease,
1985, yeah.
for this disease to spread all the way across the state. So this is a very slow moving disease.
We really want to focus on kind of the surveillance and monitoring of chronic wasting disease, right? We want to know the numbers of animals in a herd that are positive for this disease.
When you have an area like Casper that is one of the mandatory areas, which if you want to explain real quick, Janet, what that means, it being a mandatory area.
So we have two different areas that we look at each year across the state. We either have a focus area or a targeted area or a mandatory area. And this is only the second year that we have done mandatory areas. And essentially the focal area is the herd that we're trying to focus on, right? We want to get as many samples from that one area as we can so that we can have some statistical science behind what we do and say, okay, absolutely, the prevalence in this herd is 5%, or the prevalence in this herd is 50%. So the more samples we have, the more accurate that is.
Okay, then, Hank, if you have a bigger sample size like you have, people are sending those in. Are you seeing more animals infected with the disease? Quite a big number of infected animals?
Yeah, we are. So I think last year we had 850 positive animals out of just over 7,000 samples that were submitted to the laboratory. So every year we see more and more positives come through the laboratory. In fact, in the last 10 years, I think our CWD prevalence in mule deer has increased about 13% each year.
As the years go by, the more information is collected. Hank, is there any way that this disease will go away, or will it just be managed?
We hope so.
We hope so. I don't know that we can guarantee it 100%, but one of the things that I would like to remind people is keep in touch with Game and Fish. Keep your eyes on the website. We're not going to do any of this without the support of the public. Ask questions, be involved, and be aware, and we're just here to help folks as they need to know more information.
And don't forget, those samples are very important to Hank's job. More samples that come in, the busier Hank gets.
That's right. And right around Casper, we have some pretty important areas. Deer hunt area 64 and 65 are mandatory, as well as elk hunting areas 7 and 19 are on our focus areas this year. They're not mandatory, but we're sure hoping people participate.
All right, Janet, Hank, thank you so much. And we have a fan question. We'll get to that in just a couple of minutes.
Wyoming hooking and hunting outdoors on My Country 95.5.
All right, Janet, we're back and we have a question from a listener. The question is, well, how do I submit a sample if I just don't give it to somebody?
Hey, and we've got Hank still here that's great to help us answer that question. And we talk a lot about a sample. Well, what is it? Is it a chunk of meat? Is it the hair? What do you need to submit for chronic wasting disease sampling? Well, it's a lymph node. For those of you that want to know more about Hank, you can just watch his fabulous video that he put together.
Yep, that's right. So again, that's on our website. There's some pretty good handouts that'll show you what a proper lymph node looks like, as opposed to some of the tissue that's commonly submitted where people think there's lymph node, like salivary gland and muscle tissue, and just some other things that are commonly submitted. Thyroid happens to be one that's pretty common. Get onto our website, look at that video on how to collect your own sample. Those lymph nodes are really deep in the neck. You need to cut all the way past the jaw to find them. So it's a bit of a mission when you first start it, but it's one of those things that if you do it once, it becomes much, much easier subsequent time. So the first one's rough. After that, it's not so bad. So again, on our website, once you've collected the right sample, then there is a submission form that you can print off that asks your name and license number and where you harvested it and the sex and the species and all that. And then you can send that either directly to the laboratory, and our address is on the website, or you can drop that off at one of the local game and fish offices, and they will ship it to the laboratory.
Awesome. Sounds pretty easy. Thanks again, Hank and Janet. Get to wgfd.wyo.gov to find out more.
Listening to Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors. My Country 95.5.
All right, Brian. The seasons are sprung. We are rocking and rolling through rifle season, and we've got bird season that are in and out from time to time. And gosh, it's just a wild time.
It is a wild time, and the store is crazy with people, all different sports. Like you said, we got the big game hunters are really just hitting the field pretty good with the rifles, and the bird seasons are in play.
So when you come into Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, obviously you don't want to leave without anything you need, because if you're going down on a trip, or maybe you're hunting out of the area, you want to make sure that you have everything in working condition before you go, because you'll be stuck, and you guys can help them out in many ways.
Yeah, we've been mounting a lot of scopes and bore sighting a lot of rifles right now, and then just really the camping stuff, the single burner stoves, the pads, the cots, the backpacks, the sleeping bags, those categories are really coming in play right now.
We're really getting into 30s, and even I'm seeing like mid to upper 20s over the next few nights, over the next couple of weeks. So being warm is definitely something you want to make sure when you're going out in the day, and then it warms up, so you got to layer up.
Yeah, layering up is the key, right? So having a good pair of socks that are going to be wicking the moisture away, those Smart Wool, the Danners, those socks are going to keep you nice and warm. And then just making sure that you're layered up and, maybe ready for an afternoon thunderstorm, but also ready for frost in the morning. You
got to love fall and spring in Wyoming, because you never know what you're going to get.
It's a great time of year.
It's like Forrest Gump around here. You have talked to the last couple of weeks about how you guys got the game bags, and you've got everything to haul the animal out. And, of course, we did talk a little bit about the knives, when, you got to have a good knife with a good edge on it, or you'll be there all day.
Yeah, in the back of the field, you want to try to carry as little as possible, and so carrying Grandpa's old buck knife is great, but then that generally means you're going to have to carry a knife sharpener with you as well. But if you don't want to do the knife sharpener, scenario, then there's a lot of good outdoor edge or Havalon knives that have the replacement blades. So you just carry an extra blade with you, slip it on in the knife, and you continue on.
I've had a couple of people ask me about those, and are there actual blade refills instead of buying the whole knife again?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And the nice part is the quality of the blade that's in there, you can sharpen it if you want. So they're not necessarily disposable, although I think most people probably do dispose of them. But when you're in the field, usually it comes with a sheath and a few extra blades, and you can just swap them in, swap them out, keep the old blade. When you get back home, sharpen it up again if you want. Otherwise, you can buy a replacement package of blades for about $1 a blade.
It's not a bad deal, especially when you're getting high quality, and makes that skinning out really easy.
Yeah, and those blades are all, like a 60X stainless steel, just like a doctor would use in a scalpel. So they're very sharp and very reliable, and definitely our best sellers.
So once we've got it packed out and we've gone through the checkpoints and the check stations, and we've got it tagged up, and we're getting home and we start to process it, you guys have all the processing equipment here too. You don't have to really go anywhere else because you can get it here.
Right, and like I tell a lot of people is that what your investment is to buy the grinder and the parts and pieces that you need to process your animal is going to be real equivalent to a 1-year processing fee at a butcher shop anyways, and that guarantees you that you're going to get your animal back. You're going to get it packaged the way you want it to be. And so you buy yourself a nice grinder, and you've got, a grinder that's going to last you a lifetime.
And so you mentioned you pay the one fee for the 1 year, and then it just keeps giving back and back and back every year.
It certainly helps reduce your cost year after year.
And then you start charging all your buddies to come over and use it.
Well, it gives them a reason to come help you anyways.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Get out here, check it out. They've got everything you need, from seasonings to smokers, the grinders, and all the packaging materials here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports.
Get in hunting outdoors. My Country 95.5.
Woo! Brian, we talked last week about these two clowns in Ohio in the fishing tournament, the walleye tournament, that got busted cheating. They had weights in the stomachs of the fish. They had fillets in the stomach of the fish. And I didn't know if they were going to get out of there. I've seen some of the videos since we talked last, and it was rough.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I am surprised they got out of there alive and that they weren't beaten by, an angry mob. But due process is in full swing, and it looks like 3 felony charges were up against him, and then 1 misdemeanor charge, it looks like.
Yeah, grand theft. I mean, that's you think about it, $300,000, I think, is what we discussed that they won at a couple of those events. I mean, that's big money, and we talk a lot about the moral shooting and moral fishing, and there's no morals in that.
No, and running tournaments for the last 15 years and fishing them for the last 20 or so. We've talked about that a lot, about possibility of cheating, and comes down to, like you said, just good morals and ethics. And it doesn't really matter if it's fishing. You could be throwing darts or playing pool or any of those sports that us guys like to do that's competitive, that our ego gets in the way, is always going to open up the door for some type of cheating.
I think the bottom line basically is the moral aspect of it. I don't know how you went to sleep at night knowing that you cheated people out of that.
Boy, and who knows? I mean, I would guess that if his employer, his employer is now probably questioning his ethics and and his morals and loyalty, and it's just going to be a trickle down effect for those guys for quite some time. And I don't know where they're going to have to move to, but pretty much across this country is not going to be good. And those people in Canada love their fishing too, so I think they're going to have to move somewhere far, far away.
My grandpa was not real happy when things happen in baseball, the Pete Rose things, where it really dirties up the sport for everyone. But really, just 2 bad eggs shouldn't ruin a whole nest.
Right? Yeah, and I think people realize that in the course of tournament fishing throughout the country, that majority of everything is 99% legit and legal, and it is what it is. But there's always that 1%er that's going to screw things up, and we're in hunting season now, right? I mean, like, there's reasons why landowners don't let you hunt in their property, and it's because they let 1,000 people in there, but then one guy decides to run his side by side right through the middle of cows, and one of them has a heart attack and dies, and now the rancher's out a $2,000 cow. So it's just unfortunate.
It sounds like the tournament president or whatever he was tried to handle it the best that he could, and I hope it doesn't hurt everybody else that was in that, because those are big tournaments out east.
Yeah, and I think, the way that tournament director handled himself, I mean, really, I don't know if he could have done it any better. He identified the problem. He, called it all out. There was people recording, him cutting open those fish. He told people not to hurt the guy. And then they followed up with a police report. So, really, I mean, I think that I don't know how I would have handled it, honestly. I mean, obviously emotions are running pretty high, and whether you find somebody cheating or stealing from you, I mean, it's all about the same. And the first thing you want to do is probably beat the heck out of the guy.
Oh yeah.
So,
well, again, we talk about black eyes. Well, this puts a big black eye on a lot of tournament fishing out there. But here we don't have to worry about that. We would never have anybody here do that.
Well, fortunately, most of our tournaments here are all length to weight measurements. So,
right.
I mean, we can't throw weights down. Maybe we get a fish stretcher. I don't know. But we've taken that aspect of cheating out of the equation.
So no matter what you do, get out and enjoy fishing, and maybe don't take the tournaments as serious. I mean, people do it for money and they get out there, but when you forget the fun part of it.
Yeah, if you're fishing tournaments for the money aspect of it, you're completely doing it for the wrong reasons. And over the years, I've been fortunate to win a couple tournaments, but reality is, I'm spending the time on the water with a buddy, a good friend, or somebody that I want to be on the water with, and just enjoying our time. And if we win, it's kind of like going to a casino, right? You're going there knowing, okay, well, I got this much money to spend. And hopefully it gets me a few hours worth of entertainment, and maybe I'll hit a couple winners along the way. But if you don't, you still walked away there. You got your entertainment value, and maybe next time is better. And that's kind of how fishing is.
And hopefully the bookies aren't coming to get you.
Hopefully the tax man is.
Yeah, right.
Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors on My Country 95.5.
Wyoming Hooking and Hunting Outdoors. Thanks again for tuning in. Today, a real pleasure to talk to Scott Gillespie, the Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery. And a lot of folks here in Wyoming and the West may not know that this is a possibility, but using a dog to help you find your downed animal that you can't find. And that's what Scott does. And Scott, you were telling me a little earlier that you've been doing this 5 years now. And really, the tracking part has only been legal here in Wyoming and Colorado and Idaho for just a couple of years.
That's correct. You were able to legally use a leash tracking dog in Wyoming that fall for the first time in 2019.
You've been doing it, you said, for just a couple of years in the Colorado area. And what's your percentage rate? I know you've been out on quite a few tracks. When your dogs go out, are they pretty successful?
It really goes back to the shot placement. Probably 90% of the calls that I get are archery hunters. I do some rifle. I do some muzzleloader calls, but 90% of them are archery hunters. If I took every call guys made to me asking for help, my success rate would probably be 40 to 45%. And you're going to find that pretty common across the entire country. You know, it got legalized in Wyoming in 2019. I had been doing it for 1 year in 2018. So when it did get legalized in Wyoming, I had 1 year of tracking in Colorado. I also spent a lot of time that fall doing tracks in the Nebraska Panhandle. So I was kind of fortunate to be in the right place at the right time when Wyoming legalized it.
How long prior to you starting to do the track did you start working with the dog? Because, I mean, obviously it's something that the dog has to be trained up and you have to have good camaraderie between you and the dog.
You know, we're a team. Me and the dog, we're a team. It's not just the dog. When I decided I was going to do this, I really did a lot of research. I even went to tracking seminars and shows to a track fest that was put on by United Blood Trackers before I even purchased the dog. I just wanted to see what this was about. When I left there, I decided, you know what, this is something I really want to pursue. There was a lot of people at this seminar that were running dachshunds. And I thought, you know what, maybe these people know what they're doing. So it took a little bit of research, and I ended up finding a standard dachshund that was actually, her parents were trackers in Europe. So I started with this dog, and I got the puppy 8 weeks old on June 1st in 2018. Spent the whole summer training her per the book. And opening day of archery, the last Saturday of August, I actually got a phone call and dropped that puppy. She was 4.5 months old. I dropped her on her first track on a mule deer track on opening day in Colorado.
Wow. That was back in 2018 when that happened. So how is she when you let her go now?
She knows what we're doing. She'll be in the house here, and if I get a phone call to do a blood track, you know, I'll start breaking out the collars, you know, the tracking leads or her harness. She knows what's going to happen. We'll drive to the track, and if I pull up into, you know, out in the woods somewhere and we meet somebody in a vehicle, she knows. She's going bomb inside the car. She's ready to go.
Does she have any difference or any preference or issues with tracking different animals? Because you mentioned elk and deer. Does she have issues with any of the different species?
Some of them are easier than others. The problem we find with elk is mule deer, white-tailed deer, and moose, and I've dropped her on moose tracks. Each of those deer species have an interdigital gland in the clove of their hoof. Once that animal is wounded, that pheromone coming off of that interdigital gland will start putting out a different scent, and the train tracking dog can actually start to pick out that individual deer out of a herd. The only problem that we have is elk. Elk do not have the interdigital gland. So it's very hard for most tracking dogs to pull that elk out of a herd. And when I start talking about herd, you shoot an elk out of a herd. What's the big deal? The herd runs off, and the wounded one usually will walk a different direction and bed up. So if that elk doesn't have something coming off of it for the dog to follow, it can be very, very difficult for a dog to recover an elk.
Talking on Scott Gillespie, Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery. UnitedBloodTrackers.org is where you can go to find more information out about using a dog to find your downed animal. And Scott, you come up to Wyoming, and if it's too far away, there are quite a few other trackers right here in Wyoming that you guys probably all work in unison, right?
Yes, sir. Right now, if you go to that Find a Tracker on their website on United Blood Trackers, you'll find about 12 people listed in the state of Wyoming that are part of UBT now. In 2019, when I did it, there was just me and one other person in Cheyenne. Most of the people that are listed on that UBT page, we communicate with each other on Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery Facebook page, and plus we have a running text message with all of us. I'm really pleased at the amount of people that are doing this and doing it with enthusiasm. They're doing it legally, and they're really out there recovering a lot of animals that would have gone to waste.
That's awesome. Well, Scott, man, it's been great talking to you again. Rocky Mountain Big Game Recovery is where you can go on Facebook or head up United Blood Tracking, UnitedBloodTrackers.org. And Scott, it's been great talking to you. I want to definitely talk to you after the season to get some more of your stories.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on.
All righty. You got it, Scott. Thank you. All right, that's another show in the books. If you missed any of the show or any of other shows, you can listen on demand 24/7 at the My Country 95.5 app. Next week, another great show. We'll get in with Game and Fish, Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. You never know what other mess we'll get into.